Uh, Good evening, everyone. The board met earlier in closed session and took no reportable action. Before we start, a couple of items that we've been discussing at the beginning of every board meeting on housekeeping for virtual meetings. If you'd like to comment on an item, you can go to www.pausd.org/comments and fill out a virtual comment card. You can fill that out anytime, but you need to do so before we begin discussing that item so that you'll be counted and you'll be called on. And because we're not all together today, we'll be doing roll call votes on items, and Dr. Austin will be calling that roll. Our first item up is the agenda order. Is there a motion to approve the agenda order?
Mr. Drop, before we go there, the staff would like to pull item 7A, student well-being. And we just have some additional information we'd like to include in the report and bring it back in 2 weeks.
Great. Well, then is there a motion to approve the agenda order with that item pulled?
I move with that change.
Second.
All right, moved by Mr. Collins, seconded by Ms. DiBrienza. Dr. Austin, if you'd mind.
Absolutely. Ms. Atla.
Aye.
Mr. Lee.
Aye.
Mr. Collins.
Aye.
Ms. Latimerich.
Aye.
Ms. DiBrienza.
Aye.
Mr. Dauber.
Aye.
Mr. Drop.
Aye. All right, the agenda is approved, and let's go ahead and move on to reports. Dr. Austin, the superintendent.
Thank you. My report's very short. Just doing a little reflecting, and before every board meeting, I spend a little time with our two board reps, Mr. Lee and Ms. Atla, and I just want to say how much I appreciate the work that they do and how serious they take it. We speak often about how they go back and talk to their peers at school about items and how they try to blend their own desires and wishes and feelings about things personally with how their peers will see it and their advocacy role. So just really appreciate both of these two. And I've done this job for a little bit in a couple places, and the student board reps, they're always great. They're not always as great at outreach with their peers. So it's just really been fantastic getting to know them, and really want to celebrate them a little bit. Also want to celebrate our student publications. Both schools are doing a great job, and they need to know. I don't have to agree with everything you write, by the way, but they, again, so professional and treat the job seriously. And then finally, for even our youngest learners, I've seen them on the playground. I showed up at Hoover yesterday, and Mr. Sherman, one of our principals, was out playing basketball with the kids, and not well, by the way, Mr. Sherman, I won't judge you, but to see how great our kids are in every aspect of the school district, it's, we're spending so much of our time on operational issues and decisions that it's easy to lose sight of why we're really here and how lucky we are. So thank you to all the students, but especially tonight, our two board reps. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Austin. Speaking of board reps, now's your time. The floor is yours.
So before Thomas and I give our individual student reports, I wanted to introduce the board and the community to Kelly Tanaka and Nicholas from Green Middle School. Kelly and Nicholas are the ASB president and vice president respectively. And as a continuation of having student speakers from various schools in the district from last meeting, Thomas and I decided to reach out to Green this time, and they would like to give you guys an update about their school.
Good evening, all of the school board members and the community. My name is Kelly Tanaka, and I am the Green Middle School president. Today, I would like to talk about the current status of our students and about our upcoming projects. This year, we have been really focusing on making sure student voices are heard. We recently sent out a poll receiving over 300 student responses from every grade about feedback and suggestions on some of our most pressing issues. The question was asking students on ways we could improve their Zoom experience. Over 2/3 of students said breaks were one way we could improve their Zoom experience because many students the 75-minute classes are really hard to sit all the way through. We also learned that over half our students are feeling really tired in general, which makes it even harder to sit through the 75-minute classes. For all teachers to give students a break halfway through class to ensure that students are better able to focus. Our second most voted result about ways we could help improve their Zoom experience is allowing students to chat with each other through the Zoom feature. While this suggestion might not be plausible due to the distractions that could come with this suggestion, it is important to note that why students might want to chat with each other. Through virtual learning, connecting with other students and socializing is harder. We realize the struggle that students are facing, and we have been working on ways we can ensure students are able to socialize and feel more part of the green community. We have been planning several spirit events and encouraging teachers to let students work in groups if they would like to. The March 1st and March 8th opening has been a main topic in our student council discussions. So we created a new committee called the Cleaning Committee, within ways we can better improve our school sanitary health. Another issue regarding reopening is many students don't have all the information necessary about going back to school. After talking with many students, we decided that one way we could help students better understand all the new information was coming up with informational slides, as well as hosting student town hall Q&A sessions where students come in and ask questions. But the most pressing issue that we found through all the data is that over 60% of students feel that the 35-minute lunches are just too short because many students participate in lunch clubs. Our short-term solution was to propose that teachers with classes after lunch let their students eat during the beginning of class. But we are hoping through the help of the school board that we can come up with a better long-term solution for the future. One of our upcoming projects that we have been started brainstorming on is ways we can host a memorable but safe 8th grade graduation. Another one of our upcoming projects is creating a new mural. Through a new mural, we could help make our school a little more lively and enjoyable for students while also conveying a strong message. We came up with two possible ideas for the mural. Our first idea was to have a mural dedicated to the Black Lives Matter movement or some other type of social justice movement, because we feel it's important that this is an event that was historic and students should know more about it. Our other idea was to have a mural dedicated to some of our Green staff and students who have recently passed away. Finally, a recent event which happened just yesterday was Green had its annual Challenge Day, which is a great event that Green hosts every year, which helps students express their challenges, and it helps students connect with one another and as well as staff. In conclusion, this is our current status of our students and some of our upcoming projects. Please let us know if you have any questions or suggestions. Thank you for your time and service, and this is the end of our report. Unless Nicholas, you have something else to add on.
No, I think you said it great.
Yeah, so thank you for having us, and yeah.
Thank you, Kelly and Nicholas. I remember Challenge Day. It was fun. I guess I can start with the Pally report then, and then Thomas could follow. So in terms of what we've been up to at Pally, it's nowhere as much as Green has been doing in these recent weeks, but we've hosted a course selection fair for students and for incoming freshmen, and we were able to, several ASB members also participated in the course selection fair that PTSA hosted as well. We're actually coming up with ideas for freshman orientation and how we can introduce incoming freshmen to Pally and to, to our school spirit once they're back on campus, if they choose to be. We've also been hosting cookies on the quad and badminton games for the cohorts that have already started learning on campus. We've also hosted a reopening fishbowl, which was attended by Mr. Durop, so thank you. And a couple of days before that, Ms. DiBrienza was able to come in and talk to ASB about reopening, so thank you as well. Outdoor practices are starting for many sports at Pally, and we are very especially excited about football season. Theater, there are several theater shows coming up, one in March, and senior survivor applications are closing this Friday. It's an event that the senior officers at Gunn and Pally are hosting, and the first episode will be aired in a couple of weeks. and the Pally Choir Pops concert is this Friday.
Yeah, and at Gun, we also got plenty going on. So just over the past 2 weeks, we wrapped up Love Week in the week of Valentine's Day. So that was a lot of fun. We also had our Gun Hacks, the 7th Gun Hacks competition over President's Day weekend. So a lot of the CS Coder kids had a lot of fun there. We celebrated Lunar New Year on Friday 2 weeks ago. And we also had a spring sports rally last Wednesday. And that was a lot of fun to kind of engage students in a game. A few other things that have been going on. The Oracle Guns student magazine or student newspaper has published their February issue. There's a lot of great articles there. So if you're interested, check it out. We're also currently celebrating Black History Month. So just like I mentioned last time, we're celebrating African-American figures around the country. So I think this week is STEM. So we're celebrating STEM figures there. And we also have a guest speaker this Thursday, and that's going to be Miss Yolanda Conaway. So thank you for agreeing to speak to Gun. Like Pally, we also had a reopening town hall for students to get their questions about school reopening answered. That was with the principals, the assistant principals, and Miss Latimeric. So thank you, Miss Latimeric, for joining us. Some things coming up. We have photo day next Monday on the 1st of March, as well as the 8th of March. And this will be opportunities for the freshmen, sophomores, and juniors to come get pictures taken. I think seniors will also have an opportunity to get like silly pictures. We will have tours for freshmen on March 1st to help get them acquainted with the campus as they come to take their pictures as well. So we're pretty excited about that. And our YCS Service Day is coming up on March 5th. So this is an annual event that Gun does. And we're pretty excited to see how we can adapt community service to a virtual environment.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And thank you to our Green ASB president and vice president. Really great to get an update from Green. Our next item is open forum. Anyone who wishes to address the board on non-agendized items may do so now. And again, pausd.org/comments is where you can get the comment cards for some of the agendized items going forward. It looks like we have four commenters, so each person will have 3 minutes to speak. And we will begin with Rebecca Eisenberg, followed by Arya Sufiani, followed by Star Teachout.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, yay. Thank you so much. Thanks for allowing me to speak. Despite the background noise, I'm glad to be here. I wanted to actually run by you an area where of great interest to public school families, but that has not yet been discussed by the school board. And that matter concerns the upcoming proposed development, the almost doubling in size of by Castellea, the private school that's located on Bryant and Embarcadero and Churchill in Old Palo Alto. The city council is on track to approve Castellea's proposed almost doubling in size. And that is, if passed, that is going to have significant impacts on the public school community. One of negative impacts, one of the most obvious negative impacts that will be created by Castellea, should the city council allow them to do what they want to do, is that Castellea intends to excavate and build a huge underground parking garage only for use of Castellea's teenage students driving private cars, 80% of which will be coming from outside Palo Alto. And that garage will have its entrance and or exit on Bryant Street Bike Boulevard, the most commonly trafficked bike boulevard in North Palo Alto, on which hundreds of students as young as age 4 and 5 ride their bikes to and from school on a regular basis. The thought of these very young children having to share the road with 16-year-old drivers and entrance and exits to parking garages that do not look to have good visibility seems like a recipe for disaster. There have been literally dozens and dozens of meetings about the Castanea development and how we got to this terrible point that we're at right now. And none of them have I heard anyone from the school district speak up. It would be extremely helpful if someone from the district could voice the district's opinion about the need to protect safe routes to and from school for our children. It is just, we just don't want to create more hazards, especially in the context of the fact that every year young children do die on their bicycles, hit mostly by construction vehicles. Please, March 6th is the next meeting to discuss.
Thank you. And again, please email your comments to board@pausd.org and we will get to them. Next, we have Arya Sufiani, Star Teach Out, and Sam Kim.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. First and foremost, I want to thank the administrative team for working effortlessly to work with us, the staff, to resume operations on ground to greet our students. We're very excited. I wanted to bounce some ideas with school board. One, since we are President Biden is putting more funding in for schools, if we can try to offer some housing options for staff once we return, so that we don't compromise the well-being of our family members who we may be living with, and also if sanitary measures are in place. We're unsure about electrostatic sprays and cleaning measures. Every time we asked our principal, there's just been uncertainty, and we'd like to know more. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Star Teach Out and Sam Kim.
Hello, good evening. I really want to comment on how wonderful the 21-day equity challenge was. There were so many fabulous resources, and I'd say the only downside was it's such a busy time that you just couldn't get to it all. There were just so many thoughtful videos and articles to read, and I just want to really congratulate Courtney and Lana for, I think, leading that effort. There are a few easy takeaways from that I thought might be worth sharing. One is that it was Melody Hobson, who's a superstar, a superstar CEO investment person, who is married to a white man who it turns out is George Lucas. She didn't reveal that fact, but she was commenting on the ESPN CEO strategy to always seek to have a diverse and qualified selection of candidates for a position. Make those two integrated so that it's never a question that someone's there not qualified. Secondly, I think we have our student panorama surveys often suggest that we're not talking about race on our campuses, but there are often no smooth entries into that discussion for students. And so one thing also that Melody commented on from her mother is a very easy question. How were you treated? Wherever it is, whether it's at school, whether it's in a club, in a sport, whatever, how are you treated is sort of an easy entry. If you have more gumption, you might throw in, do you think being Latin or Black or female or whatever was part of that treatment? And then thirdly, if you've ever been an outsider, you'll know that sometimes it's a very difficult thing to overcome, to join something where you feel like you're not welcome. And so I think that sometimes we really do need to ask our students and our parents of color to actually join us in certain endeavors. And so, you know, that could be with clubs, with student leadership, with our site council, parent reps, our school board, whatever. But sometimes we actually do need to ask and to seek out people who we think would be really good participants to have that sort of diversity. So anyway, that's the end, and just really enjoyed the whole process.
Thank you. Next, we have Sam Kim, followed by Janice Chu.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sam Kim. I'm a parent of student with disabilities, including cerebral palsy, rare genetic disorder, and autism. And he's attending Juana Briones Elementary School. My son's special education class teacher, Miss Vanessa Valencia, has been an amazing teacher to many students with special needs at Briones Elementary. However, we were informed last Friday, Miss Valencia will not return to Briones next school year. All the parents in our classroom were shocked by this sad news, and we are trying to react to her departure. Teacher Vanessa has been a wonderful teacher to my son. Due to his medical conditions, my son started his kindergarten through distance learning last year. Teacher Vanessa worked so hard to help my son's transition to elementary school as smooth as possible. And she connected him with his preschool buddies at Briones so that my son can feel connected and comfortable. I'm so thankful that teacher Vanessa always valued collaboration with parents. She listens carefully and applies parents' input to my son's classes, which has helped him progress so much academically this year. She does her best to accommodate Leon's needs and interests. When she notices that my son needs to use high-tech tools for writing and science journals, due to his weak hand muscles, she provides an appropriate stylus and tablets so that he can use during the class or during the homework sessions. She also guided me how the adaptive programs for academic writing for youngsters, young special needs students through this process. And teacher Vanessa has very special talent that she understands special needs students' mind at a much deeper level and sees their potentials no matter what the medical conditions they are in. So as you all know, the student in special classroom at Briones, especially those students with moderate to severe disabilities, these students are one of the most vulnerable students in the district. And most of them have exceptional needs, very complicated, complex disabilities, and non-speaking or minimally speaking, and medically fragile. And their well-being at the school depends on highly qualified and trustworthy case manager like Miss Valencia, who understands students' educational and medical needs. Obviously, their mental and physical health need consistency in the education program and under great care of case managers like Vanessa. No one explained on what ground teacher Vanessa's departure was decided. I hope this letter conveys the message that Briones moderate to severe class students really need her, especially during this hard time of pandemic.
Thank you for your comment. Our last comment is from Janice Chu. Mr. Moore, are we able to get Janice Chu on?
She is on. We're waiting for Ms. Chu to unmute her microphone.
Hi.
We can hear you, Ms. Chu. Please go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. So I'm a parent of Grant's fan. He is a student in Briones Elementary School, and he has an IEP. And we just learned that our case manager, Vanessa, who is a great teacher, is asked to leave the school. And I was caught by surprise. I'm really sad about this. One thing is that she is such a great teacher, and I don't know why she's being asked. I think she's being, I don't know why she's leaving, but I just want to voice my concern. Like removing her is like it's just not what I expect. And during this very difficult time, Grant, I mean, Vanessa was great to provide like a sense of normalcy for Grant during his daily Zoom meeting. And Grant can recognize Vanessa's face, and he's happy to learn through online Zoom. for her to leave the classroom, it just adds an extra layer of trauma for Grants. And all the students in the classroom are very vulnerable to adapt to new environments. And for Grant, especially Grants, to come back to school in fall and not to see Vanessa face, I think it's just add an extra anxiety for him. I think I need an explanation why she's leaving. And I just really want to say that I really want her to stay for this class. I'm sorry, I'm just like, this is a news is kind of shocking, and I just didn't anticipate this. And I just want to really voice my concern about her leaving and and all the well-beings for the student in room 18. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next up, we'll be moving on to the approval of the consent calendar. These items are considered routine and will be approved in a single action without discussion. If a member of the public wishes to comment on any consent item, or if a board member would like to pull an item from consent, we'll consider it directly afterwards as the first action item. We do have one public comment, and so that will be 3 minutes. Rebecca Eisenberg.
Thank you so much. I am calling specifically with regard to the engagement letter with the law firm that is in the consent calendar as number, you will see which number that is, or letter. I'm concerned by the way that this is referenced and the crucial information that is missing. First of all, there's the issue of timing. The engagement letter from the law firm apparently already was hired to address the overly blown out of proportion risk of PG&E Act demanding an easement. By the way, it wasn't actually eminent domain, because eminent domain is something that only the government can do, and PG&E is not the government. So calling it eminent domain, it was deceptive. So anyway, so this law firm, the engagement letter was dated January 14th. This law firm already was hired, and purportedly, you should already know how much time the law firm spent and what this is going to cost the district. You probably remember from this past decade that I really believe that the school district does a ridiculously horrible job of managing outside legal expenses. And since it was in the consent calendar, I couldn't help but again point out that this is really pretty poor management on the part of the legal function of the school district. We really need to know what the rates are of the lawyers at this law firm, as is generally the case in engagement letters. I should know. I send them out all the time. I just sent one about an hour ago, as well as, since the work was already done, we should be given some sort of idea of what this law firm probably already has invoiced the school district for its work preventing PG&E from having an easement on this land, even though the chance of PG&E succeeding was always extremely small to start with. So that's my comment about the consent agenda. In short, please do a better job of sharing material facts about legal expenses with the community, as in the interest of transparency and accountability. Thanks so much for considering.
Thank you for your comment. Board members, is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I move we approve the consent calendar as presented. Oh, sorry, Jennifer, I didn't see you.
That's okay, I can be a second.
Okay, so moved by Mr. Collins, seconded by Ms. DeBrienza.
Okay, Mr. Lee,
Aye.
Ms. Etler,
Aye.
Ms. Latimerik,
Aye.
Collins,
Sorry, aye.
Ms. DeBrienza,
Aye.
Mr. Dauber,
Aye.
Mr. Drop.
Aye. Okay. The consent calendar has been approved. Let's move on to action items. Our first action item is 5A, approval of supplementary retirement plan.
Okay, this is my item. What we are seeking is board approval for the supplemental retirement program for certificated management, and classified management employees. The plan will be administered by Public Agency Retirement Services, and we have a total of 39 employees who have signed up to participate. So with approval tonight, we will be able to move forward with the program.
Okay. Board members, comments or any motions?
Are there any
Go
public
ahead.
comments?
No public comments.
Oh, okay. I just want to thank all those, I mean, we haven't approved yet, but for everyone that may be leaving us, I just want to thank them for their service over the years. A lot of them have put in a lot of time in PAUSD, and we are very grateful.
Mr. Drop, I move the approval of the implementation of the supplementary retirement plan.
Second.
I'll second.
Oh,
Okay, so moved by Mr. Dauber, seconded by Mr. Collins by a hair.
Okay, Ms. Etla,
Aye.
Mr. Lee,
Aye.
Ms. DiBrienza,
Aye.
Mr. Collins,
aye.
Ms. Luddemerit,
Aye.
Mr. Dauber,
Aye.
Mr. Drop.
Aye. All right, motion passes. The item is approved, and I echo Dr. DiBrienza's thanks. All right, we have item 5B, which is approval of one-time voluntary retirement incentive plan.
Okay, this is for the approval of the voluntary retirement incentive program for classified non-management employees. We have 17 employees who have registered to participate. So we are asking for approval, first of all, to waive the 2-meeting rule, and secondly, to approve the implementation of the plan to go forward.
We do have public comment on this item. Let's see. All right, we have one commenter on this item. That's 3 minutes. Meb Steiner, who is the president of CSEA.
Good evening, Meb Steiner, president of CSEA, and also special education aide in Palo Alto Unified School District. I just want to first express my thanks for the offer of this retirement incentive. It doesn't quite match the PARS incentive, but it is something sort of recognizing the work of our classified staff. And I do want to emphasize how important our classified staff is. There's a wonderful video that CSEA just put out highlighting that work and the essential work that classified staff do. And there's teachers and parents and students that speak on that video, and classified staff as well. So I do want to say thank you for the incentive retirement incentive. I also want to recognize the 17 folks who are taking advantage of this. These are all people with 12+ years of experience in our district. And as much as I wish them well in their retirement, I will miss them, their wealth of experience, their institutional knowledge, their contributions over the years. And I want us to just stop a moment and think about that non-tangible loss. One may get savings and all with newer people, but I think we should also consider that non-tangible loss, that connection to the community and the years and years of experience and mentorship of colleagues and all of those things. So I want to thank the district for offering the incentive, and I want to thank all of the employees who are participating in the retirement incentive, and wish them the very best in their choice for retirement. Thank you.
Thank you. Board members, comments or a motion to approve the recommendations? Ms.
I move
DiBrienza?
we approve the recommendation as stated in the packet.
Is there a second?
I'll second, but I'll
Oh.
also first move the waiver of the 2 meeting rule, which looks like it's
Yes.
required. Yeah.
Sorry, I skipped that one. Oh, see, Mr. Collins, you should have kept going. So you moved we waive the 2 meeting rule. I'll second that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dopper, for catching that. So let's vote on the motion to move the 2 meeting rule, to waive the 2 meeting rule first. We have a motion by Mr. Dauber, second by Ms. DiBrienza.
All right, Mr. Lee,
Aye.
Ms. Etla,
Aye.
Mr. Collins,
Aye.
Vladimir,
Aye.
Ms. DiBrienza,
Aye.
Mr. Dauber,
Aye.
Mr. Drop.
Aye. And now on to the substantive
Now
motion.
I'm moving that we approve as recommended in the packet.
Okay. There's a motion
I'll
by Ms.
second.
DiBrienza, seconded by
Second.
Mr. Dauber.
All right, Ms. Etla,
Aye.
Mr. Lee,
Aye.
Ms. Vladimir,
Aye.
Ms. DiBrienza.
Aye.
Mr. Collins,
Aye.
Mr. Dauber,
Aye.
Mr. Drop.
Aye. Motion passes. Recommendations are adopted. Moving on to our last action item of the evening, 5C, Equity Impact Report, the recommendation to establish a board committee.
And I'm going to introduce Ms. Lana Conway, our Assistant Superintendent of Equity and Student Affairs, to frame this up for us.
Thank you, Dr. Austin. This item is presented at the request of the board and outlines the establishment of a board equity oversight committee, affectionately called now BEOC. The report outlines the charge and the goals of the committee as well as anticipated outcomes. So I look forward to the board's discussion on this matter, and we'll turn it back to Mr. Durant for board discussion.
Thank you, Ms. Conaway. All right, well, board members, do you have any comments on the item? This is a continuation of our study session discussion and initial motion by Dr. DiBrienza a few board meetings ago. I mistakenly called her doctor earlier, but she is, so I will refer to her by her title.
That's fine with me.
Board members' comments or a motion to approve?
I'll move that we approve the charge, which I think is well formulated. I would like to suggest that we review our experience with the committee after a year or so, maybe at our board retreat of, our first board retreat in 2022, simply because, this is a large scope, and I suspect that we'll have experience that we'll want to reflect on. I can incorporate that in a motion, or we can just state that intention and carry it out if others agree with that idea.
I think that intention is totally fine, and not to jump ahead of ourselves, but there's a chance that you will be the agenda setting committee next year and you can agendize that.
Well, I'll certainly be within, earshot of the agenda setting committee at that point. So we can do it then. So I don't think I don't think we need to.
I'll second as stated.
Okay, a second by Dr. DiBrienza. Before we take the vote, I do need to call public comment, which I missed. So I apologize, but we do have 4 public commenters on this item, and each will get 3 minutes, starting with Rebecca Eisenberg, followed by Sarah Woodham, followed by Adriana Flores.
Thank you so much, board. I appreciate, again, the opportunity to speak to this extremely important topic regarding the lack of equity in our public schools. As we all know, the need for equity has been one of the biggest goals and one of the biggest priorities of the school district, as stated even on the website and in multiple times, and in also on most schools websites, front pages. And yet we have overwhelming evidence that we are failing, that actually the learning gap, education gap, between the haves and the have-nots, which is divided pretty starkly along wealth and racial lines, is actually continuing to grow rather than decrease. This may be in part due to the pandemic and the pandemic's very negative, the pandemic has hit hardest the people who already were from the most vulnerable situations. And the pandemic actually has helped some people who live here in Palo Alto, and that's the very wealthiest few. Of the billionaires in the United States, together as a group, added $2 trillion to their personal net worth since the pandemic began approximately 1 year ago. So while the very richest are getting richer, the lowest on the ladder are suffering. One of my life mottos is, it doesn't make sense to trust the people who created the problems with the job of solving the problems. With that in mind, I think it is, I very much back the idea of having a committee to look at this, but that committee needs to be led by somebody, possibly the only person in leadership in this district who has made a material, measurable, and significant positive impact on the state of equity in the schools. And that person is Dr. Lana Conaway. She is fantastic. For those of you who did not have the opportunity to engage in the 21-day equity challenge, I believe it's still archived up there. Check it out, see how capable and competent this professional is, who you all were incredibly wise to hire however many years ago. Please empower her. I saw that the superintendent is going to be making decisions of whom the committee meets with. That is not smart. Please empower the expert you have hired. Please let Dr. Conaway run the show for this. I appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Sarah Woodham, followed by Adriana Flores.
Oh, hello. Hi. I don't want to slow this down at all because it looks like this coordinating is beautifully rolling along. But I did want to just briefly take a moment to recognize this action being taken by staff and the board, given that equity has been such a vexing issue for such a long time. So I, just briefly want to applaud the charge of this proposed committee and look forward to helping to provide or garner and galvanize any parent contribution in whatever constructive way that I can. And, just say thank you for undertaking this work. And I look forward to the follow through that will be provided by board oversight. And since I have a little extra time, I'll just also echo that the 21-day challenge has been great. I'm behind, so I'd love it if the material could stay up there for longer, because it has become like nighttime dinner conversation with my kids, and it is, for me, actually, as a person who came here not having experience, sorry, I'm sidetracking here, but not having experience public school education. I came here for college with my family of younger siblings who did go through public school. It has literally brought out a lot of memories of things that I had, packed away for decades. And that has been an extremely powerful thing for me to actually talk about those things now with my family.
Thank you. Our last commenter is Adriana Flores.
Good evening. Thank you. And I would like to speak in support of the recommendation to establish a Board of Education committee. to assist the board in reviewing and monitoring progress in the area of educational equity. Having been involved in various equity initiatives, I strongly feel that this step in the right direction. It is a great way to advance our equity goals and engage diverse stakeholders with the vision to focus on equitable outcomes for students. And that is super important. Thank you to the staff, especially to Mrs. Conway and her team for keeping us focused on equity and access, and to our board for being proactive and for listening and welcoming engagement. And lastly, I just want to add kudos also for the 20-day equity challenge. Thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you. All right, colleagues, we had, I believe, a motion on the table from Mr. Dauber, and was it a second from Dr. DiBrienza? All right, should we take the vote, Dr. Austin?
Yes, Mr. Lee,
Aye.
Ms. Atla,
Aye.
Ms. Latimer,
Aye.
Steve Brienza,
Aye.
Mr. Collins, Mr. Dauber,
Aye.
Mr. Drott.
Aye. All right, the motion passes. Yes, Dr. DiBrienza.
I realize perhaps I should have made the comment before we voted, but I'm just thrilled that this committee, that it has unanimous support of the board and of staff, and I'm really excited for the work that we're going to be doing. And given that we're just coming off the 21-day equity challenge, which was amazing, and all of the different equity committees that seem to be going on now with the leadership team and at different sites, I'm really excited to see what we're going to do next. So thank you everyone for supporting this.
As is our process, I will put forth my recommendations for appointments of board members to the committee at a future meeting for board review and approval. All right, let's move on to our discussion items. And our first one is the second interim budget report.
Okay, I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Chow to walk us through.
Thank you, Dr. Austin. Tonight's item is our second interim financial report. It is a draft or a first read for the board. And this will be reviewing the general fund and changes to the general fund at second interim. Next slide, please. So what is second interim? I know it feels like we may have just gone through first interim in December. And while that is true, the second interim is the actual changes between the budget at first interim and January 31st. So this is a very short timeline because in order to have this financial documents ready and posted for this meeting, that timeline is about the middle of February. So it's really just about 2 weeks. And that's why we are seeing the general fund tonight as a discussion item, and it will be brought back in full, the full second interim, for the March 9th meeting. So this will include all funds as well as the multi-year projection. But that does allow us to comply with our 2-meeting rule, and that's why we chose to do it that way tonight. As with all of our financial reports, they once they're approved by the board, they're submitted to the county where they are audited and then submitted to the state. Some of the adjustments that we see at second interim include analyzing our staffing positions and adjusting for any vacancies. This is because positions that are still vacant in February, we are assuming that we most likely will not be able to fill them for the remainder of the year, although we will continue to try and fill them for the coming budget year. So they are just one-time savings. We also adjust revenue based on current information. As you can imagine, the information is a lot more current and accurate as the year goes along than it was back in May when we were doing budget development. We look at all of the salary expenditures, the actual expenditures, and then we project where those expenditures will most likely end up at the end of the fiscal year. So this could include not only vacant positions, but hourly pay, overtime pay, vacation payouts. And then we also look, as we do with our salary accounts, we look at all the expenditure accounts where the expenditures are actually occurring and where we are likely to see those expenditures at year end. Next slide, please. So when we look at our budget and our financial reporting timeline, we know that the budget is just for the one fiscal year, but it truly takes up a period of about a 2-year. It's about a 2-year process. It starts in January with the governor's proposed budget for the state. That gives us a lot of guidance and direction. And then it moves to the legislature for a lot of discussion. This happens at the same time we are doing budget development and LCAP stakeholder engagement at the district level. Then in May, there's a May revise. This year, the May revise is a little late. It's not coming out until May 20th. At May 20th, it's a little late to make significant changes to our budget because, again, it does need to be posted in our board packet for early June meeting. So if it is a nominal change to the budget, most likely we will make that change at first interim. But if it is a significant change, we will definitely make that and include it as one of our last minute revisions before preparing the final budget changes for the board. In June, we have the budget adoption as well as the LCAP adoption. That occurs in 2 meetings. There's the early June meeting, which is the public hearing for both of those items, as well as the second meeting in June for board adoption. Now, following this process, and this is interesting, the state adopts their budget. So we have adopted our budget prior to the state adopting the budget. So a lot of times that state budget has impacts that affect our budget. And again, any of those items are likely going to be made at first interim. Another thing that's interesting as we move into August, now both the district budget as well as the state budget have been adopted. And we are just now learning of our property tax revenue estimates from the assessor and controller's office. So again, right away, we are potentially making budget revisions to our budget, even though it's only been adopted for a month or 2. Next slide, please. In December, we have first interim. That's where we make our first formal adjustments, budget revisions to the adopted budget. And then in March, this is where we're at right now in second interim, is presented to the board. Early June, we fine-tune the budget and prepare for estimated actuals so that we could get the budget as close to where we anticipate ending up at year end. And then we prepare the unaudited actuals in September, which is the closing of the books. And while the other reporting periods are have some level of projected revenue and expenditures, in September when we close the books, this is truly the actual revenue, actual expenditures that are being reported out. After we do this, then the auditor comes in and does their independent or starts their independent audit report. They finish up, they have a deadline of December 15th, and then we share that audit report with the board, usually at the January meeting. Next slide, please. So we always talk about the budget being a dynamic document. And I think this is a good example of just how dynamic things are, and that we are updating the budget to reflect the most current information we have at the time. So for example, on the revenue side of the budget, we had at budget adoption, we had $268.6 million in revenue. We adjusted that at first interim to 282. And then from first to second interim, we are making another adjustment to reflect an increase of about 1.3 million in revenue. And if we take a look at the next slide, we'll see what that 1.3 million is comprised of. So we received funds from federal stimulus funds, which are also one-time monies. This is the ESSER-2, a little over $1 million for that funding source. We also received some funds for 2P, as well as some local funds through our partners at the Lucille Packard Children's Hospital and some local donations. Next slide, please. So looking at the revisions over time for our expenditure side of the budget, we also have a story to tell here. At the adopted budget, we have projected or estimated our expenditures to be $267.8 million. They increased at first interim, and at second interim, we're seeing a little bit of a decrease. So if we move to the next slide, we can look at that expenditure savings. So the items in red represent a decrease in expenditures between first and second interim. So our expenditures for certificated and classified salaries decreased a bit because we had some positions, as I mentioned earlier, that remained vacant. And as indicated, when positions are still vacant this far into the school year, we take the savings from them and recognize them in the budget. And we also have savings not due just to positions, but in hourly pay and in overtime as well. And these are largely pandemic-driven savings, while we were largely distance learning and not in a full return to our school sites. Our benefits, the statutory benefits, are a % of our salary. So as salaries go up or down, so do benefits. Salaries went down, so we see a savings in benefits as well. We have a little bit of an increase in our books and supplies, and that reflects local donations. So when we receive additional revenue for specific purposes, we put those into the expenditure accounts that support those donations. Then we also had some contracted services. These are largely for COVID-related items. We did commissioning of our HVAC systems at all of our school sites, elementary as well as secondary. And we have done a lot of work around air quality and so forth. So a lot of that is represented in these contracted services expenditure increases at second interim. Next slide, please. So looking at the ending fund balance, again, this tells a story over time from adopted budget to first interim and through second interim. The column I would like to draw your attention to is the variance from first interim to second interim. Here you can see on the revenue, this is a summary, so we're showing the summary on the increase of revenue of 1.3 million. We are also showing that a summary on the expenditure side where we have savings to expenditures of 5.4 million. So that gives us an increase to our ending fund balance of 6.7 million. So that brings our ending fund balance to 51,033,000. If we go to the next slide, we can look at that ending fund balance and how the categories that comprise that, that total. So the components of the ending fund balance are made up of non-spendable, restricted, which includes state and federal grants. So those are legally restricted, as well as items that are locally restricted. There's also an assigned category, and this is comprised of items that this board and prior boards have set aside for future projects or expenditures, as well as items that staff have identified for upcoming expenditures and needing to have funds available to meet those needs. The next category in our components of ending fund balance is the 3% reserve for economic uncertainties. This is a state requirement. We're very fortunate that we do meet this, and not only do we have a 3% reserve for economic uncertainties, but we have board policy that says that we will have 7% reserve in our Fund 17. So we have a total of 10%. But again, we're just looking at the general fund. So that's why you just see the 3% in this particular slide. And then we have the balance of funds. As we saw earlier, our ending fund balance at second interim went up by 6.7 million, largely due to the one-time revenue that we received, as well as some one-time savings for this particular year of expenditures that we had budgeted but didn't fully use. So while we are showing this as unappropriated at second interim, these funds will very likely be built into the budget as we go into budget development season and our upcoming budget study session in preparation for our next school year. Next slide, please. Okay, so what's next on our budget agenda? Technically not next because it's in the past, but just to let the board know that on February 17th, we held our fiscal advisory committee meeting where we reviewed the second interim in very good detail. We spent a lot of time doing a deep dive into all of the items that we reviewed tonight and just had a really good discussion around second interim. So that was very productive. Tonight, the board is seeing second interim as a discussion item. And then at our next board meeting, it'll be presented, the full second interim will be presented to the board for approval. As I mentioned, we then go into budget development as well as our stakeholder input. That goes through the majority of the spring. And then when the governor's May revise is released, then we will incorporate any things that need to be incorporated into our district budget. And if they're minor things, our district budget is pretty well on its way at that point. So if it's a non-significant item, it'll likely be included in the first interim. And then in June, we have the 2 board meetings where we have the public hearing on both the budget and the LCAP, followed by the adoption of the budget and the LCAP. And that's the budget road ahead. And that concludes the presentation on second interim. Are there any questions from the board at this time?
Ms. Chow, before we get to board questions, why don't we take the one public comment that we have? And that is from Rebecca Eisenberg. That's 3 minutes, Ms. Eisenberg.
Thanks for letting me talk so much this evening. This particular matter was of most interest to me of all the matters, perhaps because 1, I like numbers, 2, I like P&Ls, and 3, for a living, I handle employment compensation negotiations for a living, which is why I had a correct and strong opinion about how the board shouldn't have extended the superintendent's contract for so long, and 2, why I'm able to see what's the story that's being told by this presentation, for which I'm very grateful right now. I think it's time that the board admit and recognize that Palo Alto School District has a retention and recruiting problem. There should not be open roles at this point. And clearly, as was indicated in open session, we are losing some of the best, most qualified, and most beloved staff here at the PAUSD. That needs to be acknowledged, needs to be recognized. And I want you all to understand that if teachers leave a negotiation by compromising and the union strikes a deal with the school district, but the teachers still aren't thrilled to work here, the district has not won that negotiation. There is no winning by forcing an unattractive package down teachers' throats. We need to compete with other districts, and there is no convincing teachers that it's good to work here when they are looking at alternative offers that in every single way are better. It used to be in the past that the reputation of our school district was enough to attract the best teachers and to keep them. That's not the case anymore. Between test scores that are no longer the best in the state, not even close, to a history of reprehensible legal violations, especially with regard to the response to sexual assault of young women and the continued, this is coming up later, lack of appropriate response to that. Teachers don't want to work here like they used to. And again, there's no PR, there's no marketing that will change that. Teachers endure terrible commutes to get here and back. And every time there's an opportunity to build teacher housing, you all let it go. Board member Dauber, who I see shaking his head, went on record very often saying that we don't have a recruiting and retention problem, therefore we don't need teacher housing. Look at these numbers and tell me, and talk to students, talk to parents. You need to try harder with the packages.
Thank you. Board members, questions for Ms. Chow, comments? Okay. Ms. Chow, thank you for the presentation. And as you mentioned, we will be having a board study session on this shortly in the next few weeks in March.
Thank you.
All right, let's move to item 6B, revised COVID-19 testing plan.
Okay, I'm going to start this off before I turn it over. But first, I'd like to thank Lana Conway. I think the work around the 21-day equity challenge is pretty obvious. But what's less obvious to people is that she's also in charge of COVID testing, which seemed like an absolute natural for our assistant superintendent of equity and student affairs. But the reality is she's jumped on this. She's owned it right from the beginning and very much appreciated. We'll call that duties as assigned. Our county is now in day 7. Tomorrow will be day 8 of qualifying for the red tier with a case count of 6.7 cases per 100,000. The county needs to qualify for 2 weeks before we officially shift to red. This can happen as early as March 2nd, meaning March 3rd would be the first day in the red tier, as clarified in our meeting this morning with all superintendents in the public health department. Our county public health department also reiterated today that it has no recommendation for student testing, nor did the statewide work group that I served on for all administrators for the state of California. They are suggesting surveillance testing once per month for adults in contact with students, with a maximum of once every 2 weeks for asymptomatic employees. No person who is tested positive for COVID should be retested for a minimum of 90 days. That's not my opinion. This is the public health department. I'm just reading back notes from our meeting today. Since we've also dropped below 7 cases per 100,000, there is no requirement to test for athletics, something that was in the newspaper here recently. Our memorandum of understanding, our MOU with PAEA, calls out testing for our employees at a cadence of once every 2 weeks. So, and we will continue to honor that, obviously. So now I'll turn it over to Ms. Conway to frame up the issue and introduce our guest. And as a reminder, this is not brought for your action tonight. So Ms. Conway.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Austin. As most of you know, COVID testing has been an essential part or element of our COVID mitigation plan since we opened our doors for in-person learning. In September, if you will recall, we brought forth a partnership with Stanford Health to offer on-site testing to staff. And we are now testing 4 days a week, every single week, at sites across the district. So our staff, particularly at the elementary site, won't even have to leave their don't have to leave their particular offices to go get testing. However, as we prepared for another phase of reopening, it was incumbent upon us to start exploring additional options, even though we weren't really quite certain what requirements would be in effect through the governor's school reopening plan. But we wanted to be prepared for any scenario that came up as a result of that plan or any local plan that we have. So after exploring multiple companies and several of them were explored, one company, Predison Inc., topped the list for consideration. So we have Predison here tonight, along with his team, Shadong Jia, Winston Koo, and James Azaro, to give us just a brief overview of what's involved with their testing plan. And then we can take some questions from the board regarding the process and where we might be considering going next. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Winston Kua, whom I believe is going to be leading the discussion.
Yes. Thank you, Yolanda, and thank you, Superintendent Austin and the board. I really appreciate the opportunity. I'd like to share some slides if it's possible. Let me see. Put this up. Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
All right. So thank you again. And I'll make this brief. I know I have a few minutes to give a talk. So I want to get to the meat of it. I'll tell a little bit about Predison. We're very locally placed. And one of the points is how we're going to support the Palo Alto Unified School District. Several of the ways are multi-language instruction, streamlined registration process, customized result delivery system. And we really want to take the burden off the administration over there. And we will probably take, do most of the legwork. And also, I was asked to give a brief overview in terms of the workflow, the pre-test stage, as well as the recurring test once every 2 weeks. So here, Predison is actually, we launched 5 years ago, and our main goal, purpose of their company is actually, diagnostic tests for pharmaceutical companies. In the advent of COVID, we actually are CLIA-CAP certified, and we were asked to be able to participate in helping the community. And one of our goals is to be able to, reach out to schools, and we're really, watching the Safe School for All program through the state of California. And we want to be able to provide same-day delivery in terms of results, convenient approaches in terms of sample collection. We have a pretty reliable and very robust approach as well in terms of technology. And right now we can offer, 15,000, 20,000 tests per day. And also we really want, the CEO, Shadong, is online. He wants to be able to provide this at no cost, which means covered by insurance and or government. And so just to show in big picture and very simplified, what the pretest is, all the paperwork that you probably had to do before. We want to streamline that process. So currently, as the staff and faculty are being, tested right now, we would like to upload the roster with your personal information and insurance information through our server, and all the children, the kids, the students, and we would like to have the parents help on that side as well to be able to go through our online portal system to register. So the school and the district does not have to go through that burden to be able to put all that information in. So we want to really take off the burden off you. And for recurring tests, after all this information is actually uploaded, there's actually not much work you have to do. And actually we do a lot of the bulk work, as you can see outlined in blue color. So all the blue is what we actually do. And what in yellow, the initial stage is just the roster. And afterwards, just a requisition forms for every time you do a test, we just have to put a barcode associated with an ID, and that we can make associated in a relational database. And also in terms of the families and the students, we will have the parents provide their emails and their phone numbers, and we can actually have all the information into the portal so that an administrator, like for now, Yolanda will have access to all the results from all the schools within that district, and she can see all the positive and negative results. And along with the parents will also have the option to be able to get the results by email and or SMS through text messaging. And oops. And just to show you, we really thought this thoroughly. We're working with other schools as well in reference to consent forms. We won't be compliant in every step that we do. We have insurance information gathering form for the students. We have requisition forms catered to schools as well. So we really want to simplify the process. And all this is also in multi languages. This is just to show you from one spectrum to another: Spanish, Chinese, Vietnamese, English, and then we also have online in-home test kits as well, instructions that are on video, and also we have telemedicine approaches as well with various different languages that are offered there as well. So it's really trying to streamline this and to be able to support the Palo Alto Unified School District.
Mr. Cole, if you go to just for a second, if you go to the display settings at the top there, I think you should be able to click on an option there that will enlarge the screen where we're seeing your next slide. Yeah, I think that will work.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no. Yeah. So, okay, I see it now. Okay. So, as I said,
I think you just have to click it, and it'll work.
Click this one?
Click that. Yeah. Yeah, and it should work in a second.
Oh, okay. All right. I see. All right. Thank you so much. Yeah. So what we want to do is be able, as I said, to simplify the process. As we have worked with other schools, we would like to work closely with the Palo Alto Unified School District in identifying where the pain points are actually, and where we can actually, as a company, to be able to support those particular areas. And these are some of the examples that we are showing you. And here is just a diagram. I mean, I didn't realize how big the Palo Alto School District is. There's a lot of schools. I can imagine how many students there are. So we've been working at the back end really hard in reference to developing the relational database. And we really haven't gone through the details in reference to how administrator will want to be able to look at the portal and at what level, what permissions, maybe a superintendent of each of the schools want to be able to have access, maybe not have all access. So this is something that we will discuss further in developing. So this aspect here is something similar. So this is something simple. So we just said 3 schools. So this is what an administrator will look at, right? So you'll be able to see all the schools, and we can customize this. And what's great about this, we can customize this to what your needs are. And you can see really easily, the samples. We can also add demographic as well. We could put ethnicity, all the various different fields that you're interested in adding, and we could place all those in there. And this is what administrator will be able to see all the schools. And then within that, as you go further, you can actually see, the students' names. You can see a PAUSD result. You can see what school it belongs to. And you just show the 3 different schools, what class they belong to, and the dates that they were tested. And in each one of these, you can actually, at the end, you can see that we review the reports to be available. And also over a period of time, as you said, collect, do testing, every 2 weeks, twice a month, all those will be concatenated. So all those reports will be there, and they'll be stored for however long that you want to be as well. And the other aspect of this is that we can also integrate, if you have a EMR system within the school, where this can also be uploaded, and we can work with both IT departments to be able to upload that into the school system. But this is catered towards the Palo Alto Unified School District, and we can work with you in reference to how customizable you want and to be able to get the reports. And also any positive report, we will immediately contact the person of contact by phone call as well as by email. So my goal today was really to show how, what our testing options are, in reference to, how easy in terms of in-person, whether it's off-site, all of these at-home collections. And I know there was a slide that was given out to the board, so I didn't want to be able to go over those other aspects, but I'm just reiterating is that we have multiple testing options. We really have a streamlined, simplified registration process, and all that paperwork is one time only. And we have a real-time dashboard report, and these are also customizable. And what we want to do is be able to help, provide healthcare professionals to do on-site collections to ease the burden on your health staff. We upload the results based to the state, within 3 hours the reports are generated, the results are available. And we also do this multi-language in various different formats for you. We also coordinate pickup of collected samples through courier. Since we're very local, it's very simple for us to be able to coordinate a schedule to be able to pick those up. And we want to provide a rapid turnaround time of 24 to 48 hours. So it's a really quick presentation, just to really give you a high level view. I just want to leave more time to be able to have questions in reference to some of the details. Thank you, Yolanda, and Superintendent Austin. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. We'll turn it back over to the board now for questions.
Great. Thank you. We don't have any public comment, so colleagues, please go ahead. Ms. Latimira?
I have a thank you so much for this, well, for getting all of this together for us, Ms. Conway, and for the presentation tonight. I have a question about insurance. I'm sort of assuming the way this works is a family sets up an account online, you put in your insurance info, and then from there on out, it's just kind of handled automatically. So if you could clarify that, and then related to that, for families who don't have insurance,
Sure.
is it?
Okay. So in reference to, we use a third party billing, and what we do is once we upload all the information for the families, we actually bill the insurance. And they go through various different phases. If the insurance doesn't work, they go through government funding, and we also negotiated a rate if people don't have insurance. We don't want to burden them. So the founder and the CEO actually created a foundation, the President Foundation, to really offset the costs. So it comes out. So we're still in discussion, and we'll be more happy to discuss with you, because our cost for our test is about $40 to $45 in terms of time and the reagent costs. So we try to, we're not here to make profit. We just really want to help the community, and what we wanted to be able to do is just to break even in terms of our cost. Does that answer your question?
Well, I guess my question is, are families going to get bills?
No.
No.
They will not get bills. No, they will not get bills.
That's what I wanted to make sure of.
Yeah,
Okay.
they will not get bills.
Even if they don't have insurance, they're not going to get a bill.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't want to burden, the district, including the families that are within the district.
Ms. DiBrienza, Dr. DiBrienza.
Thank you, Mr. Durant. One of my questions was exactly the one that Ms. Latimara just asked, but another one had to do with the dashboard. You are all putting together this dashboard, right? And we're just going to have access to it. So we are providing the information for staff, and families would provide their own information, correct?
Correct.
Okay, great. One question I have is for undocumented families that might be in our district.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for obvious reasons, some of them are really hesitant to put any information in. So I'm wondering what kind of information you're asking for, and if they say from the get-go they don't have insurance.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and this happens to a lot of customers that we see as well. And the state knows this as well. I mean, by the state guidelines, we have to report undocumented as well. And there's certain demographic fields that they request. We definitely don't do anything to them. We just give the results. But there also are funding, from what I understand, for undocumented people as well, that are available. And also there are funding for the district as well in terms of offset health care costs. And I could share that. I could send that to Yolanda as well. But there are lots of funds out there that can support all these things. But we, in reference to a company, we just report the results to the state, whether it's documented or undocumented. As by law, we have to report that.
Right. So when you say you're reporting the undocumented people as well, you do not mean anything about reporting that they are undocumented.
No.
Anyone that comes to you, you are reporting there.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And so the identifying information is like typical name, address, cell phone number, so you can reach them if it's a positive test.
Correct.
And date of birth.
Yeah.
But then that's it. If they
That's
don't
it.
have insurance, they tell you that.
That's it. Because what you need to be able to download the report, for example, if you go to our website, all you need is your first name, and a lot of these undocumented clients have like their last name has like three words or 4 words. So that's why it has to be very consistent, so that when they actually download the documents, they use the words, the names that they use on the form, and plus the cell phone and their email, because that's where the reports goes to, and the date of birth to be able to download the report.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah,
I'm really excited that we're looking at this. This is great.
Mr. Lee?
Yes, first of all, thank you for this report. I think it's super great that we are looking at testing and expanding that to students. in terms of reopening, testing is definitely a big step towards another layer of safety and just building confidence in the plan. I have two questions about testing. And first one, I'm not sure who it's directed towards, whether that's Mr. Quell or the district, but I might have misread the agenda item, but my interpretation is that are students only getting take-home kits for COVID testing, or do they also have access to on-site testing?
I can answer that. So the great thing about Predison is that they offer multiple options. So we are still in conversation about what the cadence and the flow would look like as it relates to both our staff and our students. The great thing is that we can tailor the support and tailor the testing to whatever the conditions are in our current situation. So you will hear more if this comes back to the board. You will hear more about the specific plan when we get to that level.
Okay. And my second question, I guess this is directed towards Ms. Conaway. If a student isn't in the in-person, doesn't choose to attend in person, so they're like at home the whole time, do they also have the option to get tested, or is this limited towards students who choose in-person school?
This plan is targeted for in-person staff and in-person students. So that's our first priority right now.
Okay. And as a follow-up to that, if a student decides to go to campus like once and then, or like infrequently, not all the time, do they also have access to testing, to COVID testing?
Well, certainly we will try to broaden it, because any access to campus, creates a situation we need to pay attention to. So we will likely take those situations into account as well.
Okay, sounds good.
Dr. DiBrienza? Old hand?
Old hand,
Okay.
old hand, Mr. Up.
All right. Well, thank you, Ms. Conaway, and thank you, Mr. Quo, for that presentation. I think the continuing discussions about cadence that the district is going to have are going to be very important, and I'm really glad to see this being explored, because any additional layers that we can provide of safety as we move back to campus are certainly appreciated in my book. So thank you very much for the time today. Ms. Latimer, a question?
Yeah, can I just ask a clarification question? What's the next step? Are you going to present like an actual, here's the plan we want you to approve next meeting, or?
Well, I think certainly in consultation with Dr. Austin, we're going to have to determine what our actual plan is. So we have to work that out. And then I'll be working with Predison to actually develop the plan and the specific elements of the plan that we can roll out and notify our families and our staff of.
Okay.
So,
because I know families are going to have a million questions, particularly if there's take-home tests and how does that work and do they get dropped off? But it doesn't sound like right now we need to go into those details.
Right.
We'll be having another discussion about this. Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone.
All right, thank you.
Before we move on to the next item, a quick point of procedure. For those who joined the meeting late, at the beginning of the meeting, we voted to pull item 7A and move it to a future meeting. I see some comment cards being filled out on that. So if you're in this meeting for 7A, student well-being, that is not going to be on the agenda today. All right, let's move on to item 6C, approval of schematic design for Escondido.
All right, actually, the next three items are going to be with Dr. Golden. So I'll turn that over to him now.
Hi, good evening. Yes, as Dr. Austin mentioned, we're doing three items, and I may as well do the introduction to all three at the same time. We're moving forward with the bond program, and we have for you tonight three approvals requested for schematic designs. If you recall, we have this 11 meeting process, 2 meetings to approve the moving forward with a project, 2 meetings to do the conceptual design, which is sort of basically a 2-dimensional layout, and then 2 meetings to do the schematic design. And this is, again, the 5th meeting, and anticipating a 6th meeting where the board will take action. These 3 projects are kind of moving along sort of at the same pace. We have a couple that are earlier and we have some that are later, but such that we will hopefully get approval of the schematic design, and then later on this year, we'll get approval of the submission to DSA, and in 2022, we're going to we're going to seek authorization to bid. We have 3 presentations for you. The presentations are the presentation in the board packet are quite long, and Tom has abbreviated them, but we're pleased to respond to any questions you have about any of the slides. And so with that, Tom, why don't you start with Escondido?
Okay, good evening, everyone. Everybody see my screen okay? Great, thank you.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, so Escondido is our first school. And the last time you saw this, I believe, was last July, where you approved conceptual design. We've basically just refined that same design, not a whole lot of changes from the last time we went through. The one aspect of the project we did do some work on was with this enrichment lab building back here. We had some meetings with Bing Nursery, which is the school that sits right here, our closest neighbor to Escondido. And they asked us to take a look at a different option of how to locate this building to where it didn't impact their view as much as the conceptual design did. So what we did do is we moved this building over towards the portables a little more and created this kind of quiet reading garden here, which during the community meeting we had on the 11th, they were really happy with. We also lowered the building so that it'd be the same elevation as the other buildings next to it. So that was well received. The rest of the project, this is the new admin and multipurpose building. And then we have some minor modernization in the library wing. And then this is just a blow up of our site plan. This is the front entrance to the school. People will come in this way. There'll be a gate and then also a pass through, walk through the library or lobby space where people can, visitors can check in and then be admitted onto the campus. We're trying to save as many of the existing trees out there as possible. And then, like I said, incorporating this reading garden and keeping these trees over here. Here's our first of 3 floor plans. This is the administration wing, the lobby I spoke of, where people can come in these double doors, get checked in and be admitted to the campus. There's a suite of offices for principal and vice principal, health office, and then a staff lounge and workroom over on this side of the space. Once you get into the interior of the campus, this all area here is covered walkway and place for kids to hang out, be protected from rain or too much heat. You can walk into the multi-purpose room here, a stage with associated storage, and then a servery up here, and then new restrooms on this side. So basically it's designed where if you do have inclement weather, students can queue in this area, come through these doors, come and get their lunches or brunches, and then come back into the MPR without going outside. The other smaller building is the enrichment lab building. We have basically 2 classrooms. One we're just terming wet, meaning it'd be used for science and art. And then the other is really designed for music. In this particular case, we did put in an operable partition. As you know, Escondido is one of our larger campuses, and they felt it was really important to be able to expand if they needed to for these spaces. And then this is just our library wing. The dark area is the library. We're not proposing any new improvements there, but you can see we have the Learning Center, incorporating the improvements that we made during the ed spec review during master planning, 2 reading specialist space, 1 for Spanish, 1 for English, and then a resource room down here with the associated speech therapist. This is just kind of an overall site plan of, trying to look at how circulation will work with these new buildings. And then a couple elevations. This is our admin and multi-purpose building. This is looking at it from the drop-off. On the left, on the right, this is what the view would be going into the multi-purpose room from the interior of the campus. And then my last slide is the enrichment building, enrichment lab building. On the left, that's the view looking from the portables to the front of the classrooms. And then on the right, you see kind of an idea of what that outdoor reading garden will look like. And with that, we'll turn it over to your questions or comments.
Yeah, and let me make just two comments. First, yeah, some question that's near and dear to us is this project's currently within budget, and also as are the other two. And this schematic design has been reviewed by the property committee, as have the other two.
All right. Does it make sense for us to do these individually or go all three at once?
I'm suggesting that you address, since you may have questions specific to this site, that we address this one, and then if you want, you could. Well, there is not going to be a vote, so.
Okay, let's. I don't see any board questions or comments, so why don't we do all three at once, and we'll do questions on all of them at the end of that. There are no objections.
Good. So Tom, why don't you start with the second one then?
Yep. So our next. See, I'm not going to be as smooth in my transition now, Sean. Okay, so here our next school is Fletcher Middle School, and let's see, I'm going to go to the beginning. So Fletcher is a much smaller project. I'm going to do my display settings. Sorry. And for this this project, again, it really has not changed much from the conceptual design. We've worked on a little bit of the quad design and done some work inside the classes that are either being renovated or are going to be new. We have had some project meetings and a community meeting, a PTA meeting on the 5th. And again, people are positive about the idea of having, adequately sized classrooms, since that was the big focus of this project. So you can see here we have the new classroom wing down here that'll have 3 standard classrooms, and then a larger industrial tech classroom. There's some blow ups of these. And then these pink spaces are other CTE spaces that are going to get improvements made to get in line with the new ed specs that were generated as part of the master plan. And then these orange spaces were the where we're taking smaller classrooms and removing walls and making them, our standard size classrooms. Yeah, with that. So we did look at the quad area and trying to make better use of this space. Right now there's a stage over on this side, and it kind of bifurcates this whole quad area. So the concept here was we have this nice row of redwoods that kind of frame the space, putting a new stage in on this side of the quad, having a nice grass area, and then maybe more of a kind of a pedestal space up here where during graduation or other events, they can put some benches. And here's just a floor plan of a blow up of that new wing. And this is kind of how it fits. I mean, we're really kind of shoehorning it into this space. But on the right, you'll see that's the existing E wing, and it has that large overhang. And we're going to try to use that overhang to create kind of a covered corridor for the new building. And then you can see the new building is on the left, and it's basically drawn out to match our other buildings on campus. So that's kind of what that looks like. Wanted to try to keep this space open to this corridor so that we can let in some natural ventilation and some daylight. And then here's a blow up of the industrial tech lab. You can see it's more of a classroom space on the right. And then there's a storage and a workspace in the middle. And then there's an exterior yard where there's dust collection and a compressor that makes a lot of noise. So it's going to be enclosed. Right now, that's like right across from an existing classroom and fairly disruptive. Here's our art classroom and the improvements we're doing there. As you can see, mostly new cabinets and some storage space. And this is the new broadcast classroom, which should basically provides them with a new classroom space, and the recording and control room spaces are directly adjacent to what those spaces now. And that is Fletcher. Any questions, or can I just roll into?
Why don't we roll into Palo Verde? Then we'll do comments.
All right, give me 2 seconds here. Sorry. So hopefully you can see Palo Verde now. Okay, so Palo Verde is a little bit of a different bird. The board saw a schematic design to this last fall, and shortly after that approval, our architect discovered that the Palo Verde site is now within a 100-year floodplain. Well, it's always has been, but DSA was requiring us to raise the elevation of the new buildings, the finished floor height, to above the floodplain. So what was happening was our design was, this is what that design was back then. We were going to have to raise these two buildings 4 feet high, higher than the rest of the buildings that were there. And then the other buildings along Rourke, those were going to have to be raised about 3 feet. So it really, the architect was giving us some site plans that really made a lot of, up and down, a lot of ramps, a lot of stairs, and it just didn't seem like a very workable solution. So we did have them go back to the drawing board and take another look at the design. And what we've come up with is a scheme that leaves the administration wing where it is and doesn't do any development here. So we can basically keep that same entry elevation continuous through to the campus, and then move our new buildings more towards the interior where we can make those transitions a little easier. So right now, this is the new multipurpose wing and the servery being located where the existing multipurpose is in the yellow. And then down towards the lower right-hand side, you see a new sort of T-shaped wing that would replace the portables and add some the classroom spaces, the 2 flex rooms we're looking for. And then on the left, this is just modernization work to provide that third kinder classroom for the Palo Verde campus. So here's, we're doing some minor work at the old admin wing, not much. Here's what the plan looks like for the new multipurpose building. Pretty straightforward, multipurpose room with a stage, 2 restrooms, and then kind of a servery area with a back kitchen space, and then just more restrooms and storage. Here's kind of an elevation of how we'd make that transition to the new multipurpose building. And then here is the floor plans for the classroom wing. So what this will house 3 4th grade classrooms here with the new flex room, and then the 3 5th grade classrooms over on this side. And what this does, we keep the kids club untouched, and that kind of gives us this opportunity to make that transition without it being too obtrusive to the rest of the campus, and especially the play fields. This is kind of the perspective of what that upper grade classroom wing would look like. And that is it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. DiBrienza?
I don't have a question. I just want to thank the architects and the whole team for the work they did specifically on Palo Verde, because at the property committee, we saw the original plan and then it came to us when it was, oh, the flood zone and we're going to have to change levels. And they recently came back with this. And I was really impressed with the problem solving they did that still makes it a really accessible campus, but takes care of what they need to take care of without making unnecessary ups and downs. So thanks to everyone who worked on it for being really flexible. It looks great. They all look good to me.
Any other comments? All right. Well, thank you very much. I've seen this all in property committee and it's great. I echo Dr. DiBrienza's comments. All right. Why don't we move along to item 6F, CSBA Delegate Assembly Election. Yes, Dr. DiBrienza.
Well, I had a feeling that without Miss Baton Caswell, we might be a little bit of at a loss over who to nominate here. So if anyone feels strongly about anyone, please speak up. But what I did is I just went through and I looked at who had experience and who was new and who was from an elementary district and who was from a secondary district and who was from a unified district and what things they talked about and whatnot. And I picked 6 people that I thought made a good, diverse set of candidates. So I'm happy to share those 6 and nominate and make a motion that we approve those, although I don't think that we have to vote tonight, right? Tonight's just the discussion.
Right.
So I don't know if you're even interested in hearing the 6 that I'll just put out there for now. But my first go was Van Lee, Andres Quintero, Fiona Walter, Danielle Cohen, Carol Prisunka, and Bridget Watson. And I'm happy to discuss next time and take any suggested changes, but in case people didn't have strong feelings either way, I figured that might move us forward for next week.
I had 3 and they were all on your list, so.
Look at that. Who knew? That's great.
Well, I suggest that we just bring this back on consent with those folks. And with our thanks to Ms. DiBrienza, I too was a little worried about how we were going to proceed without Caswell's knowledge, but so thank you.
Mr. Durop and I talked about it today. We were like, oh, we usually rely on someone to do that for us. So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. DiBrienza and Ms. Latimirak. We'll go ahead and bring that back on consent as there are no objections. All right. Let's move on to staff reports. The only staff report is 7B, School Reopening Progress Report.
Okay, that's mine. It's brief. You have the written pieces in front of you, along with some documents to help tell the story. But let me just start with this. I had a superintendent's meeting today. So it's every superintendent in our county. We were meeting with the public health department and the county council, and we all have the same exact feelings as many of you watching tonight and trying to work through things. The reopening rules are confusing, conflicting, and change often. And there's a reason why we attached the crosswalk item on the agenda. The local public health department has been our anchor throughout. CDC will make comments and press releases and speak on Sunday talk shows. But really, for the most part, and this isn't entirely 100% true, but for the most part, we'll give guidelines and thoughts about things and not mandates. Our local Santa Clara Public Health Department is more often than not the most restrictive of the rules that come out. That's been true in almost every aspect of going back to March from the closures on, and that's still true. So here we go. There have been some changes in conditions and rules regarding reopening. And when I wrote that line, I was talking about specifically today when we were all given some new guidance from Santa Clara County Public Health. It is likely that the state will announce our county moving to the red tier on March 2nd. So a week from today, officially, they announce that it's going to happen, then it happens the next day. So for an example, San Mateo moves to the red tier tomorrow or at midnight. So we would officially be in the red tier on March 3rd, Wednesday of next week. They eliminated today in our guidelines, it was shared with us, the 5-day wait time after going to the red tier. So for a while, we had reported this because it was accurate at the time, that once you move to the red tier, you still had to wait an additional 5 consecutive days. That's gone now. So with that being said, our staff, if things go along the way that they're going right this minute, and there's not a big change in conditions in the next 7 days, our staff should expect to return on March 4th and 5th. That's Thursday and Friday for their asynchronous days, which are part of our memorandum of understanding. Although they're welcome to be on sites all year, and some have been teaching from the rooms even through distance learning all year, but it looks like right now March 4th and 5th would be the report days in asynchronous time. Staff members have already received a letter from our HR office indicating that it was coming. We were not as specific as March 4th and 5th because we just got that today. If that is our cadence, then students would return in grades 7 through 12 on March 9th. Now, let me just back up for a second. Even as I'm looking at my note here, I don't want to confuse people. Our 6th graders are still coming back on March 2nd. Okay, that's a Tuesday. But our 7 through 12 could report back on March 9th. That's a Tuesday. And it's a Tuesday again because our Mondays are already asynchronous days in our schedule, and that will remain the same. Additionally, we were told today that schools that reopen will not close if the county returns to the purple tier. Of course, we hope that doesn't happen, but once you're open, and then it goes to the same orders in place about percentages of staff-student combination to close a school. The other caveat, and this is, again, a little confusing, once we can open, so the window opens on, let's just say things go the same for the next week, on March 3rd, school districts have a 3-week window to open. If they don't open within that 3-week window and there's a change in conditions, it would block them from reopening. So that 3-week window is important, and that was part of the trade-off for the 5 consecutive day piece. That's the way it was explained to us anyway. So I fully understand that this stuff is maddening, that the rules are hard to follow and look like they conflict, but that is the most accurate information that we have today about our reopening, and really, practically speaking, pretty much in alignment with the pace that we were looking at for bringing students back. Last thing on reopening is we did just open our 3rd 5-day-a-week cohort. This is the first at Hoover Elementary in 5th grade. So we have 2 first grades at Addison. We have a 5th grade at Hoover, and we have more coming on soon. Again, they have to have the numbers that we can support in the classrooms. They have to be lower class sizes to start. And then we go through and do our complete safety check and make sure that they are certified to handle more numbers. But we expect in the next couple of weeks to have more coming online at different school sites. So I'll stop right there.
Thank you. We do have public comment on this item. There are 2 members of the public. The first is Meb Steiner, president of CSEA, followed by Rebecca Eisenberg, and you'll each have 3 minutes.
So thank you, Meb Steiner, president of CSEA. and special education aid. I want to speak. There's so much to say about this, and I want to thank everyone through this difficult year and the amount of work of reopening. And I think it is aptly named sort of the progress of reopening, because we have been operational and open in sort of various levels. The first thing I want to call attention to is the in-person statistics at a glance. And that is in the board packet in the information at the top, at the beginning of this agenda item. And I want to call attention to the 475 classified staff that are in person. And classified staff have been in person since day one of closures with our food service and custodial support to support them. Then we added our maintenance and operations folks in spring. So they came on board before other support staff in summer. It is a huge number of people, and it shows two things. One, the fact that many of our classified jobs cannot be done remotely. These are our bus drivers, our custodians, our athletic trainers now for our athletic cohorts, our food service, our maintenance, all our aides who are supporting our special ed kids who've come back, and our elementary students that have come back and now are 6th and on. It also shows how essential we are to the functioning of our schools. The other thing I want to call attention to is that the video, once again, that CSEA created, you can Google it, We Are Essential CSEA, and it will pop up. And CSEA and other education labor groups presented a plan called Classes, Classroom Learning in Safe Schools for Employees and Students, to lawmakers in early February. And it really emphasizes our desire to be back with our students and to do so safely. And the area I want to focus on here is the multi-layered mitigation measures that we require. We have done a lot. We've got our ventilation, our PPE, our mask use, cleaning, all of that. But one thing that I want to emphasize once again, I've said it at several board meetings, the very first mitigation measure is avoiding contact with other people. And by that, I don't mean to say nobody should come back to school. What I am trying to say is that we be very mindful of which adults we bring back and limit the number of adults so that we can support our students and keep people safe and think about remote work.
Thank you very much. We've got actually two more commenters, Rebecca Eisenberg, followed by Terry Baldwin, PAEA president.
Thank you very much. This reopening process has been failing. It has been failing for students, it has been failing for parents, and it has been failing for teachers. The only thing that's frustrating is the failing part. What is not frustrating is the waiting for county guidance, because the details of the county guidance, whether cohorts need to be limited to 12 or 14, do not matter. The general aspects are things we have known for a year. Let's talk about what we've known for a year that has not happened. For a year, we have known that we needed a good plan in place regarding testing. That did not happen until it was put in the capable hands of Dr. Lana Conaway. Thank you for giving this project to her. We knew that there would be a need for smaller cohorts, again, 12 or 14 in size. That has not happened. Most school districts, well-run school districts, took care of that kind of planning last summer. Last summer, we were told the excuse we're being told now, which is that nothing can be done until the county releases guidance. Y'all, we know what needs to be done. Smaller cohorts. And for the upper school, like my child at Pally, that is nowhere close to be done. And yes, it's complicated at high school, which is why you need to start earlier. And still, this hasn't happened. That is what's required for safety, for teachers, and for students, is small cohorts. Also, what we know we've needed to do to enable smaller cohorts is to hire more teachers and more staff. Yet, as the budget report just showed, we're losing teachers and staff right now. We have unfilled positions. We have fewer teachers and staff working for us this year than we did last year, according to that presentation, or at least a lot lesser than we had planned for before the pandemic hit. All of these areas are areas in which we are failing. The public is also unaware of this, and I fear that this board is unaware of it too. I'm so glad that 2 of you have kids in the district, but 3 of you don't, and you aren't experiencing the frustration, the rudeness with which the parents are being treated by top leadership, the lack of empathy or kindness, being shown by the superintendent to the parents, to the kids, and I'm guessing to the teachers. There is so much work to be done, and the very top leadership is.
Thank you. And our last commenter is Terry Baldwin, PAEA President.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank everybody and also kind of reiterate what Meb said and what Rebecca just said, that we definitely need to look at this reopening and look at the county guidelines. I have a feeling that we're not spacing our students to the proper spacing. That, I think we all kind of disagree on it, but it's actually in the county guidelines that it's 6 feet, unless there was a good faith effort that they couldn't get to 6 feet. And I heard that some of the board members had told teachers that it was changed to 4 feet. And if it has, I still haven't been shown that information that it's been changed. So I really think we need to be careful with our class sizes, especially with 6th grade. I know the district has said that 7th through 12th grade will be 6 feet because there's not stable cohorts there. But I still believe that our 6th grade needs to be at 6 feet, and any elementary grades that are opening to full classes 5 days a week should be at 6 feet as well. We really should make sure we're keeping everyone safe. We're not testing our students right now, so we don't know if they're positive or asymptomatic and bringing things home. We just don't have those numbers because we don't test students. I'm not saying that that's the district's fault right now, but I think we're on the right path to opening up and testing students, and I think that will help. And I do hope that parents will opt into that so that we can make sure we have accurate numbers. We can close cohorts if need be, because we'll have all of the numbers we need to see if kids and adults in classrooms are positive or not. So thank you, Lana, for looking into that and bringing forward that new testing strategy. I hope that this goes through with the board, because I think that's an important step when we're bringing more people back on campus. And I agree with Meb, the least adults in there as possible for everyone's safety. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Now we've got board comments. Dr. Austin, before we do, could you address the spacing question? Because I heard there were some discrepancies in understanding.
Yeah, discrepancies in understanding is probably a good way of framing it. So yes, I've asked this question multiple times and received the same answer many times. And it's been also stated at the county meetings with school board members and the county meetings with the safety officers, that when cohorting is in place in grades TK through 6, you can go to 4 feet. The best good faith effort is something that I've asked the county multiple times to just clean up and say what they're trying to say. Includes things like the individual barriers, the ventilation systems, the adherence to masking at all levels. all of those things. Our plan specifically for sixth grade was reviewed at the county level and was approved at the county level as stands with 4 feet. You gotta remember, it's 4 feet from the middle of the chair to the next chair. But if you walk into an elementary campus, which I do every single day, you'll see that they're all also behind a barrier. So the guidance at the secondary level, meaning 7 through 12, is assuming a lack of cohorting, which is going to be our model. We are not going to be cohorted. So you have to, the requirement is different for the spacing. 6 foot spacing still is the same at all levels, from teacher's desk to the first student. But I can tell you also, every class I walk into, if I can speak to a teacher without interrupting their lesson, I ask how they're feeling about things. And at the elementary level, it is just across the board that they feel safe. They have what they need. And the teachers that have gone to the 5-day weeks have all been volunteers, and their families have enthusiastically agreed to that, and it's moving along beautifully.
Thank you for the clarification.
Sure.
Okay, Dr. DiBrienza, followed by Ms.
Thank you. Dr. Austin, I know that when we, way back in the fall, when we were opening up elementary, we had safety plans for each site and we felt confident in them. And staff was really nervous that we didn't have it all done ahead of time. And I know for a couple of weeks now, you've all been, maybe a couple months, you've all been working on I think with a third party in some cases, to check ventilation and make sure everything's ready. Can you just give us an update? If there's a chance that teachers will be back next week and students will be back 2 weeks from today, where do we stand as far as preparation in each of the classrooms?
I may ask Ms. Chow to jump in here if I fall short, but 6th grade classes are ready to go. And that's a huge difference. When we were opening elementary, and let's go all the way back to when we opened Coverly for post-secondary futures, it felt we were nervous up until the day before. We figured out this work now. The classes are all set up. I've seen pictures of the 6th grade classrooms that have been sent over. They're ready to go. 7 through 12 still has some work going on. And we're just trying to communicate with the site admin teams to make sure they're in contact with all teachers that once a room is set up, to leave it alone. That's been one of the things that we've battled a couple times, that the work has been undone. But we have all the dividers we need, ventilation's being checked, the last few. By our next board meeting, be happy to come in and go through each report with the board also. But we feel really, really good about the preparation at this point.
Good. And the other question I have is, and I don't know if I just missed this, did you say about how many secondary students expressed an interest in likely returning in person?
Yeah, we've done a couple things. The sites have done their own surveying, and we still believe middle school will participate at a higher level than high school. High school, some of the informal numbers I'm getting back are right around half. Half would seem high to me, but we'll see. And for an example, one survey at Pally, Mr. Klein reported back to me that about 20% of the students indicated that they may not be there the first week. They want to see how it goes and then make a decision. And that's another thing that we've done that other districts have not done, which is to allow the flexibility to come in or not come in. I think that's going to serve us well.
I agree. Okay, thanks. That's helpful.
Ms. Atla, then Ms. Ladimirak.
Hi. So first of all, I would like to thank you guys for the update. And I thought it would be good to reciprocate that and update you guys and the board and district about like the student opinion regarding these regarding reopening plans. I'd like to start off by saying that, I understand that there are a lot of holes in this plan, and that students, parents, and teachers have very valid concerns about them. And I also know that there are a lot of like logistical site level details that have yet to be resolved. Like, what are we going to be doing lunch? A lot of, at least teachers at Pali share classrooms. What's going to happen to them? How are entry and exit points being coordinated? Those are some of the concerns that friends and teachers of mine have brought up during some of the conversations I've had with them. But I also think it is important to note that this plan does provide a lot for students, at least I think so. I think the flexibility that we have and we get to choose each day whether we want to go onto campus or not, the fact that we don't get to change teachers or classes or classmates, I think that's a huge plus for students. But I also realize that because we're not in cohorts, because teachers, don't voluntarily get the option to choose, that there is a risk for, a spread. And from the conversations I've had, it seems like a lot of kids at Pali are very divided on this. Some really like it and are excited about it. Some are feeling very wary and scared by it. And I think that is very valid. And I think, from the conversations I had with Thomas, and I'm sure he's going to touch up on this, it's also similar with at Gun. I would also like to state like my personal experience with it. I returned to campus last week for cohorts on Thursday and Friday. When I took the survey in December, I originally stated that I wasn't going to be coming back and that I wanted to do full distance learning. And I chose that option for a variety of reasons. But I think I kind of just hit a point where I couldn't take it anymore. It's been like a whole year, and I know a lot of students feel this frustration too. I just couldn't do it anymore. So I emailed Mr. Berkson and I asked if I could be placed in a cohort. He was very responsive and I was able to get back and on campus the next week, which was last week. And first of all, I'd like to thank everybody that works there: Ernesto, Mr. Berkson, Mr. Kyle, Mr. Klein. I was able to meet all of them in person. They were so welcoming. And I just think they've been doing so much work for the cohorts in person, and I really admire it and appreciate all the hard work that they've been putting in. And I would also like to say that a lot of people did not choose cohorts, and that is fine. And it was a decision that they had to make for their educational experience. But the people who did, and the people who are in my cohort, which is like 5 people, we have really enjoyed it. We have a cohort group chat now, and it is what parents are saying is right. I'm still socially distanced from my peers. They're on their own Zoom. I'm on my own Zoom. We have headphones in. I'm not doing any group work with them. We're not putting our desks together and, interacting in that way. And it's still, in that regards, it's the same as the experience that I've been having at home. But what's different and where I feel much better and what I feel much better about is like those 10 minutes during passing or during lunch when one of my friends gets her speaker out and we all sit on the senior deck and she blasts music and we throw around a football and we have cookies on the quad. And it's not a lot, but it's those little things that for me have made a big difference. So, and I know it's not the right decision for everybody, and I understand that, but I thought it'd be beneficial to share my perspective on it.
Thank you, Ms. Atla. Ms. Latimirek, and then Mr.
Thank you so much, Ms. Atla, for sharing that with us. I actually wanted to make a couple of comments specifically to students, so I really appreciate you giving your perspective. I wanted to speak a lot to what Ms. Atla just talked about, and I know that there are many secondary students that are worried not just about their own safety, but about the safety of their teachers. And I just want to reassure any students who are listening that we are not opening schools because we don't value the safety of your teachers or because we underestimate the dangers of COVID. We are doing so because, like so many employers all over this country, the purpose of our work, the reason that we exist, is something that for many, many students can't be done effectively from home. And that's not the fault of students or teachers, it's just the reality of the limitations of distance learning. And, you know, we're all familiar by now with the concept of an essential worker. And we think about people who are caring for the sick or the elderly, or working in grocery stores, or manufacturing the vials and the chemicals that are going into making the vaccines for all of us. You know, none of these jobs can be performed at home, but they're essential to keeping our communities functioning. And the same is true of education. And what is so complex about reopening schools is that for some students, distance learning works. And so for them, teaching can happen remotely. And this is really a testament to the creativity of our teachers, their resiliency. They have engaged so effectively with so many students under incredibly compromised conditions. But the fact remains that for many other students, and you know, far more than we can serve in PAUSD plus or small cohorts, distance learning is not working. Or maybe it worked for a while, or a few months, or a semester even, but now they're reaching a breaking point, like sort of like Miss Atla just spoke to. So we're reopening for no other reason than, you know, it's not politics or ego or because we don't care about teachers. It's because students need us to, and failing to open would be failing in our duty to them. And so I really just want to speak to all the students who might be listening, who, you know, like Miss Atlas said, it is your choice, and it's not going to be right for all of you. But for any of those, if there are any of you out there who want to return, but you're feeling guilty, or you're worried, or you feel like you're betraying your teachers or public health or your civic duty or something like that, you're not. We're following public health guidance. We're following our agreements with our unions. We're really being careful with the safety measures we're implementing. And, you know, your teachers really care about you, and they want what's best for you. And I know that emotions and anxieties are high right now. I get that. But none of that is on you, and your teachers are not going to blame you or hold it against you for returning. This is really your decision. It's 100% yours to make. Every adult in this district is behind you, whether you choose to stay home or whether you go to campus. We're with you. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you. I'm sorry that took so long.
Thank you. Mr. Lee?
Yes, I want to echo everyone and just thank you all for providing this report and for this opportunity to speak about the plan. And I do want to start by saying there's a lot of good things about the plan that personally I'm looking forward to. And Maida has already mentioned a lot of them. Just the chance to see your teachers and your classmates in person, to, you know, change up your routine and to get out of the house every so often, as well as choice and flexibility. Like Ms. Vladimiric mentioned, there certainly are students who are struggling socially, mentally with distance learning. And it is a good thing that I think we're giving them the opportunity to go back on campus. So yes, there's a lot of great things about the plan, and it's going to go forward in a few weeks. So I'm excited to see how it's going to roll out, and I'm hoping for the best. I know we all are. But of course, safety is the top priority here. So I do have a couple questions and comments I want to make on that. And the first one is about the 5-day delay, or the lack thereof. I know Dr. Austin mentioned earlier that the county is no longer requiring that 5-day period between us going into the red tier and reopening school. And I want to ask, or strongly ask, that like we keep that 5-day delay in place. And there's two reasons behind this. The first, I don't think it's good for communication and just trying to build trust to change up the plan just a few days before the plan likely goes into place. So given that we already said there's going to be a 5-day delay, I think it's beneficial if we keep that in place, just to keep some continuity with the information we've been telling staff and students over the past 2 weeks. And the second reason is it's great news that teacher vaccinations are in place right now, that are not in place yet, but the county is starting to let teacher vaccinations continue on starting on the 28th. And I think just having a little bit of time to get those vaccinations in place, ensure that staff can become vaccinated within that 1 week period, 1 to 2 week period, would be beneficial to keeping to another layer of safety and to just protecting staff and helping build confidence in the plan for both the teachers as well as the students who will be coming onto campus. So that's the first thing. If we can keep that 5-day delay, it's not required by the county, but we already told teachers and people that this is what's going to happen. I think we should continue along with that continuity. The second thing is just building off of vaccinations. Once again, great news that the county is letting teachers get vaccinated. And I've heard a lot of staff has scheduled appointments. So that's good news too. I'm wondering if the district has data on how many staff have been vaccinated. Is that something that y'all can speak to?
That's an excellent question. So today we were told that the county is creating a database and a template, and they're going to send that out. It might be sent out through us, but they're spearheading that so that we can keep tabs on who has appointments, and if they want to tell us who has no intention of becoming vaccinated.
Okay. Would it be possible to like add a column to the COVID-19 data that we have on the PAUSD website that just kind of gives updates on teachers, on the number of teachers that have been vaccinated? I don't know, like privacy concerns or all that. So would that be possible if the district has the data to just inform the community of that?
Yeah, I don't know that answer right now. So yeah, I think it's a good question, but we can definitely follow up on that.
Yeah, okay. If we can look into that, I think it's great to just keep the community and students and everyone updated on how many staff have been vaccinated. I think that's good to, build trust in the plan and build confidence in the safety measures we're taking. And another question I had along the lines of that, I know we've mentioned that there hasn't been COVID spread attributed to the schools. And that's definitely good news. And I'm hoping that's the trend we can keep up. I was just kind of curious about the methodology that we're using in determining whether COVID spread is attributed to school or not.
We have contact tracing for every reported case to us for anyone who's actually been on a campus. It was 48 hours, now it's 10 days. So anyone who's been on a campus within 10 days with a positive case is contact traced.
All right, that's great. And then final thing I want to ask about is just a clarification on something that was brought up earlier. I think we mentioned that the 4 feet spacing distance, or the 4 feet spacing guideline between desks, was measured from the center of the desk to the other center of the desk. I was just, since desks are not like desks are not like super narrow, they're kind of wide. I was wondering if, like, would that mean that there's only around 2 feet of spacing between the edge of one desk and the edge of the other desk? I was just kind of confused about that, if it really is center to center.
We have a minimum space requirement of 24 inches between desks. We're more like 30 between desks, but the center to center is how you measure for compliance.
Okay. That's it for my questions, but I do want to say, I feel confident about the plan. I think that I've heard a lot from the admin at Gunn who have been preparing for these safety precautions. And I think that they're doing a great job to keep everyone safe and to implement guidelines to ensure everyone's safety. So I feel pretty positively about the plan. I think that we're able to provide a lot of these benefits with coming onto campus and just letting students have the opportunity to see each other after almost a year in quarantine. And in terms of safety, I've heard a lot of the planning that's been going on behind the scenes, and I feel pretty confident about that. I'm hoping for the best, and I think a lot of it is really going to fall on us. So I don't know if there's any students watching, but let's channel the energy we have in terms of just worrying about everyone's health into actively following social distancing guidelines, wearing masks. And that's, I think, the biggest factor, ensuring that every individual on a campus is complying with health guidelines. So I'm looking forward to the plan. I hope to be on campus soon. And I just want to thank you all for coming up with this.
Mr. Dauber?
Thank you, Mr. Durup. Dr. Austin, on the 5 days question, can you just refresh me at least about what the current county guidelines are and how much time there will actually be between the county re-entering the red tier and us having students in secondary schools?
Yeah, actually, if you do the math on that, there's 6 days gap between us re-entering or entering the red tier and our first day. So it is actually 6 days.
So even though we're not required to maintain that 5-day buffer any longer, we are, is that right? We're actually going to be
still exceeded.
That's still exceeded. Okay, that's good. I just wanted to take a step back, and I was listening to the students who thank you for really that thoughtful response, which I think supported our desire to get students back on campus. I couldn't have said it better than I wouldn't have tried to. But I think that our approach to this, since the beginning has been to, try to find small victories where we can, to be compliant with the county guidelines, to reopen as fully as we can, while complying as fully, while complying fully with county guidelines. And I think that's been a strategy that has worked for us as well as it could have. I can definitely see that this isn't the best configuration. Sometimes when I talk to parents and describe how this is actually going to work there, they're like, this doesn't sound a lot like regular school. And that's because it isn't regular school. This is, this is the best we can do under difficult circumstances. But I think you can really see from the students that even that is a huge, benefit over where we were before. So I just want to take a moment and thank staff and my fellow board members for kind of persevering through this process and looking for opportunities to make the progress we can when we can make it, because I think it is paying off for students.
Great. Any other comments, colleagues? I'll just echo my colleagues' comments. I spent the last 2 weeks meeting with students in various forums. Ms. Atla invited me to a fishbowl at Pally. I was in a classroom at Gunn, and then I met with students in some other forums. Hearing their takes on this plan, their desires, their concerns, and teachers and parents as well. So it is really heartening to see the work that's been put into this, to answer all those questions preemptively and as they come up, knowing that the county guidelines are not giving us a whole lot of stability and certainty. I think what we've been able to do has been impressive, given that. So just a thanks to Dr. Austin, you and the team for persevering in this, and managing to prioritize student mental health, student return, and also dedicating a great deal of time and effort and money to safety. These are all, I will share that Dr. DeBrienza and I were in a city school liaison committee meeting last week, and our vice mayor, Pat Burt, commended the district for its dedication to the mitigation measures we've put into place. I think calling them, some of them, very cutting edge and far beyond even what the city's been doing. So, in that sense, I wanted to pass that along, Dr. Austin. You were there, but to the rest of the board, I think it's really a credit to my colleagues for driving that, and it's really going to be a benefit has been a benefit for everyone who's been on campus, and will be a benefit for those coming back. So with that, I've got I've collected a bunch of nitty-gritty questions over the last few weeks, but I will ask those offline to Mr. Jacobs and yourself and get answers for folks in the community who need them. But for now, that's all I have. Thank you. All right, let's move on to our information items. So these items are presented for information only. There's no staff report or action to be taken. Board members will go ahead and go through these as a block. If you've got items that you'd like to speak to, we'll go ahead and prioritize those items. Usually, I send around a spreadsheet, but I just plumb forgot. So we'll go ahead and do it this way. So we've got A through F information items. Board members, go ahead and raise your hand if there are any items you'd like to speak to, and we'll address those in the order that they are received. Ms. Ladimirak?
Yes, let's see, I guess we pretty much answered my COVID-19 data questions, I think. So let me just go to Title IX. So two things. One, I'm really glad to see the additional training on reporting requirements for the wellness staff that's scheduled for March. It seems like that's the more training, the better. So thank you. And I'm also really glad to see the regular work with student leaders, which leads me to my question about consent education. So the report notes that students are repeatedly asking for this. And I know that we have talked about this as a board a few times, not specifically about consent education, but it's come up a few times in our conversations. And I would really love kind of to hear, I'm interested in knowing where are we with this right now? Do we have an idea of next steps? Sort of, the board has talked about, we've mentioned kind of starting consent education earlier. We've sort of talked about a lot of things, but I would love for us to kind of get some direction on prioritizing this, given that it's something students keep bringing up and that we seem to have some agreement on it as a board. So I just would like to know, I want to make sure student leaders continue to be involved in conversations about consent education and what would be useful and what's needed. And I'd also interested in knowing, is there movement on this? Do we have a plan? Are we talking about it? Just kind of any ideas of next steps. And that may be Comey. I don't know exactly who that's directed at.
I can take that one. Yes, to all that. We have things in motion. I've been waiting for a couple staff members to return from different things that they've been involved with. We should have something out to you very, very soon. So yes, that work has progressed. I think trying to go in depth on that right now would be a mistake, but that's coming your way shortly.
Great, perfect. That's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
All right. Colleagues, are any of those hands for Title IX? Okay, Ms. DiBrienza, Dr. DiBrienza.
Thanks. My questions really mirrored Ms. Ladimirak's a lot. I'm happy to see the update come periodically, and I'm glad to see more on staff training and that there are continued conversations with student leaders. I hope if there are any students that have experienced, have gone through the process or have not felt satisfied with how the process went, has been able to get an audience with our staff so that we can continue to focus on improvement where we need to improve. And that also we continue to communicate with them so they really understand the process going in, right? So expectations are where they need to be, but to make sure that we continue to get better at this hard work. And the question was also about consent education and where we are with that. So it sounds like we'll get an update soon on how that's going. I know right now we work with Health Connected for sex ed and gender and puberty education. I don't know if that would be a logical partner, but I'm sure staff is figuring that out. So I look forward to that update. That's it.
All right, and then Ms. Dr. DiBrienza, you were actually next in terms of pulling an information item to speak on, and then it was Mr. Dauber.
I had no other information items I needed to address tonight. Thanks.
Okay, Mr. Dauber.
I'd like to comment quickly on two items. The attendance report. I'm happy to see the attendance report and that it's going to be a monthly item. It really reflects, the disparities that we've talked about around chronic absenteeism. I'd like to ask staff. There's a mention in the staff report accompanying the tables of measures being taken to address chronic absenteeism, home visits, and other measures. I'd like to see, as this report continues, which I think is going to be monthly, if we can get some more detail about those measures and how effective they seem to be, so that we can understand, whether our mitigation efforts are successful. And I also wanted to call attention to the Public Records Act update, which has become a sleepy little corner of our information items because everything's going great. But it wasn't that long ago that everything wasn't going great. So I really want to give my appreciation to staff who have been diligently working on this and turned what had been a real crisis into a smoothly running part of the district operation. So thanks to the staff who are involved in that.
Mr. Collins.
Thank you. On the Mr. Dauber's point about the PRA, there's an old saying that the test of a management team isn't whether they have problems, it's whether they had the same problems they had a year ago. Because everybody's got problems, but if you can't solve your problems, then you've got a real problem. So the idea that this was a big problem not that long ago and now it's not, I think is laudable and what we should look for. I'd like to be able to say the same in the future about chronic absenteeism, which I think is really a fundamental issue. I mean, it goes beyond kind of, okay, this is interesting, or I didn't know that. This is a fundamental lever we need to pull. And in addition to the things Mr. Dauber asked for, what I really like is a concrete goal of what exactly we're going to improve and how much and by when. And then have that included as part of the report, never changing, so that we can hold Dr. Austin and the staff accountable for achieving those results. Because I'm mildly interested in the things Mr. Dauber talked about, like what are they trying and how's it going and all that stuff. But I would gladly forego all of that just to see the needle move in the right direction, because that's all that really matters at the end of the day. So, Dr. Austin, I really strongly encourage you to, next time you bring that back, to have specific goals about by subgroup and maybe by school, whatever way you think is most appropriate, so that we can, watch the chronic absenteeism numbers move in the right direction, and hopefully a year or two from now be saying about that what we just said about the PRA requests. Thank you.
Thanks. Before we wrap up information items, we do have one public comment. Rebecca Eisenberg on item 8B, attendance report.
Hey, I actually wanted to speak about the Title IX issue, but it wasn't an option on the form. So that's the one. So looking at the reports, there were several, in my opinion, on-site allegations of sexual assault and sexual harassment on site. Now, there aren't a lot of kids on site right now, so it's extremely problematic to see that even with such few kids there, that there are reports of assault at Pally. There are also some reports against a teacher. And I think it's important that you all look at these reports. Now, I want to mention this in particular because it's come up quite a bit in a lot of meetings that are, with the student bodies, and in particular, the Pally principal just last week mentioned Title IX in the context of misbehaving young women on social media. And there's a lot going around right now about a problem of young women being mean to each other regarding Title IX. So first of all, I think we need to be very careful about not blaming victims. When I think it was very important what Mr. Collins, I think, said, or possibly someone else, that we need to make sure that when people complain, that they actually have the experience, the perception of being heard. And you cannot bully someone into having a perception of being heard. You have to actually listen. You have to listen, you have to respond, you have to investigate in an actual realistic way, and you have to actually follow up. There needs to be consequences. So what I know about this social media blitz is that these young women did not feel heard. They didn't feel heard, they didn't feel believed, they didn't feel that their claims were researched, and they did not feel that consequences happened. And now that the assailants are in college and continuing not to have any consequences, while very often the victims continue to live in fear and have post-traumatic stress and all those other horrible consequences of being assaulted that I hope none of you know, but unfortunately 1 out of 3 young women do know. That is the problem. The problem is a problem of victims not being heard, feeling heard, of situations not being investigated, of consequences not happening. There is no problem with people on social media. Please, please be mindful about not blaming the victim and working harder to listen.
Thank you for the comment. Colleagues, we're on to board operations. If you have any board operations, please raise your hand. Dr. DiBrienza.
As Ms. Atla mentioned, last week I went to PAUSD and spoke with them about reopening and answered a lot of questions. And that was really great. It was good to hear a diverse array of student opinions and thoughts about reopening. Always good to get into a classroom as much as you can these days. And property committee met, and we sort of have a little bit of a pause on BBAC because BBAC finished the work that the original charge was for. And we decided at this point, we're not quite disbanding the committee, but are sort of paused while the property committee figures out if there's something else that we need to tap into BBAC for. So they're on a little bit of a hiatus. And as Mr. Drop mentioned, we had our city school liaison meeting, our first one. And we are looking forward to next meeting coming back with sort of a master list of the things, sort of like our board calendar, making sure there are certain things that always come to us on a regular basis. And one of the things coming up, well, happening now and has been happening is XCAP is, did I say that right? The plans for the rail and what's going to close and what's going to be elevated. And obviously all these things really impact the district and the families in the district in commutes and in buses and lots of other things. So we're talking about how to continue to push to elevate that in the midst of so many other things going on. We hope to have a written report for you on that next time, but on updates of the committee, because I think that might be my role, Mr. Rapp, since I am the second year on the committee. So for next time, I'll have it.
Yes, heavy is the head. Thank you for that report, Ms. Latimerek, and then Mr. Collins.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on Mr. Lee mentioned this earlier. I attended a Q&A with gun students about reopening last week. And I just want to thank Mr. Lee again for organizing it. It was so well done. I have attended so many adult organized events that were way less well done than that. So thank you. It just ran really, really well. I think the students appreciated getting to submit their questions early and then get them answered in writing if they didn't get answered in the event. So thank you so much. And Mr. Lee and I have also talked about scheduling regular Q&As with students on subjects to be determined, but that are of interest. So I'm really looking forward to getting that scheduled. And more with gun tomorrow. Ms. DiBrienza and I will be joining Ms. Conway to talk to the entire gun community about equity and social justice. So that'll be another fun event. So thank you.
Great. And finally, Mr. Collins.
Hey, thank you. Building on something that Ms. DeBrienza said, I think it would be great. We had a nascent effort to have written report as part of our evolution of our committee structure and increasing utilization of committees. We had for a while some effort to have written readouts from the written summaries of what happened at the committee meetings, which I find very valuable because it's hard otherwise to keep track of what's really going on. So I'd encourage my colleagues to, adopt that approach. And even if it's a short update, at least have something that we can either post to the packet or I'm not sure how we do it I know when we met in person, we just handed them out, but maybe post to the packet or do something so that we can have some kind of way of understanding what's going on in the various committees. I think that would be great. And Mr. Darab, as our leader, I hope you'll adopt that and encourage our colleagues to do that. Thank you.
Thanks. I certainly did find it valuable preparing those as well, because it's a good summary. So if you are able to take that on, board members, please do try and create a little summary. And you can get it to Vicky prior to the board meeting, and she can include it in the packet. We've done that in the past for BBAC and property committee reports, or you can just have her circulate it as she would if we were in person. Ms. Ladimirak, was your hand up, or is that okay? All right, colleagues, great meeting. This is the end, 9:17. The meeting is adjourned. Enjoy your night.